The new neighbor. David leaned against the window frame, watching the chaos of moving day unfold across the narrow street. Cardboard boxes, ragged blankets, a steely gray sedan with faded stickers. Then her Jenna stepping down from the car, her stance equal parts exhaustion and defiance. Tight jeans clung to her strong legs. Even from a distance, David could see the unapologetic confidence in her shoulders as she barked orders to the two teenage boys. Her sons, he presumed. For a mother, she moved like a woman utterly in command of her own body. David felt an involuntary heat rise at the base of his neck, a thrum of dormant hunger waking up, raw and unexpected. That afternoon, the doorbell jolted him from his own thoughts. He opened the door to find Jenna standing there, sweaty, hair half untied, eyes sharp but shadowed with challenge. "Sorry to bother you. I'm Jenna from across the street." "My kitchen's already throwing a fit. Sink's leaking like hell." Her tone was direct, almost daring him to say no. David grinned, grabbing his toolbox. "You picked a hell of a day to move in. Let's see what's trying to drown you." Inside her kitchen, he knelt beneath the sink, felt her presence looming over his back. Tension radiated off her in waves. Every small, sharp sound seemed to echo in the closeness. Her breath, the tap of her fingers against the countertop, the scrape of denim thighs as she leaned in closer. Their first conversation crackled. Jenna smirked. "Lucky for me, my neighbor isn't just friendly. You look sturdy enough to handle anything." David shot her a dark look over his shoulder. "I can fix a lot more than you think, Jenna. Just gotta know what needs attention first." She laughed, short, throaty, almost mocking. "You sure about that? Most men think they know what a woman needs until they get their hands dirty." David's hands tightened on the wrench. Sometimes getting your hands filthy is the point. For a second, silence filled the air. Tense, electrified. She stepped forward, intentionally brushing his arm with her thigh as she reached for a towel. His pulse hammered. Her scent, sweat, and cheap perfume shot through him like whiskey, coarse and intoxicating. She leaned close, voice low. "Careful under there, neighbor. Pipes aren't the only thing that burst when they get too much pressure." He straightened, face inches from hers, their breath colliding. His eyes traveled deliberately down her body. "Maybe you like a little pressure, Jenna." Time stretched thin. Her smile was feral. "Maybe I do. Maybe I don't break easy. Guess you'll find out." As David finished the repair, every motion felt like a showdown. Sweat stung his eyes, muscles straining more than they needed to simply to impress. Pure, animal posturing. She watched him, detached but hungry, mouth curved slyly. At the door, just before leaving, Jenna blocked his path, eyes locked. "Thanks, David. Not every man could handle a mess like mine." He leaned in, lips almost brushing her hair. "You haven't shown me your real mess yet." She let him pass, but her stare was fire, licking up his back. David left her house with his hands shaking and his mind reeling, already craving the next collision. The first temptation, night, fell over the neighborhood, the sky thick and restless. David's house glowed with the amber pulse of a single lamp, jazz humming low through the air. There was an edge to the evening. Something feral pulsed beneath the surface as he poured the deep red wine. Hands steady, but pulse unsteady. Jenna arrived in black, fitted, unapologetically dangerous. For a moment, when she stepped inside, all the air shifted. He handed her a glass, their fingers grazing, a touch more violent than gentle. Nice place, she muttered, eyes sweeping the room. Or, does every lonely man keep it this clean? David smirked. Depends on whether he expects company he actually wants. She dropped into his sofa, legs crossed, bold, like she owned the night. David set the record spinning, a saxophone's moan threading through their silence. Conversation crackled. Jenna's laugh was rough, almost bitter, as she told him stories about her ex-husband, how he became an empty suit and an even emptier bed. Her words spilled out, unfiltered, sharp. You ever miss being really touched, David? She asked suddenly, voice low, eyes locking his. Sometimes I think I could scream, just wanting to feel a man. Not polite, not careful, actual need. David's jaw tightened. He sat beside her closer than necessary. Loneliness eats you alive in this kind of quiet. Some nights, all I want is to grab, to bruise, to know I'm not just fading away. Their laughter died. A dangerous tension swallowed the room. Jenna looked at him, hungry, tearing, already burned by the same fire. He reached for her, hand rough on her thigh, dragging her closer. Their mouths crashed together, no gentleness. It was a collision. Teeth, tongues, desperation. Her nails raked his neck with a violence that demanded more. David's hand snaked beneath her shirt, greedy and bold, feeling her tremble, feeling her arch into him, a silent plea. Fabric tore. Buttons ricocheted across the floor. Jenna bit his lower lip hard enough to taste blood and moaned into his mouth. Fuck, Jenna, he breathed, voice jagged. I want you. Right here. Now. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look right at her. Do it! I've waited too damn long for a man who actually makes my body scream. He pushed her down onto the sofa, his body heavy on hers, as if daring the whole world to interrupt. Clothes hit the ground with abandon. His hands branded her bare skin, hot, urgent, claiming every inch. She clung to him, legs wrapped tight, every movement raw and reckless. Their bodies met in a pace of pure need, rough, heated, desperate. The couch groaned beneath them, noisy, a threat and a promise. Sweat slicked their skin, her voice rasped in his ear. More, harder. Make me remember what it means to fucking live. He answered her with a thrust, a guttural growl, mouth on her neck, hands pinning her wrists high. No pretense, only the chaotic animal sound of flesh, breath, hunger. As their climax crashed, she clawed his back, biting down on his shoulder, not holding back a single sound or shiver. After, tangled in the mess they'd made, breathless and laughing, Jenna looked him in the eye, her voice a dare. You can break me if you want, David. I won't complain, and for the first time in years, he believed her. The cycle of desire, their affair spiraled into a ruthless ritual, hidden, feverish, insatiable. Each time the air between David and Jenna crackled, it was less a lover's game and more a collision about survival. Secrecy only fueled the appetite. A text with nothing but an address. A time. A single coded word. Minutes later, the house would be locked, blinds pulled tight, hearts beating in their throats. They fucked wherever the mood seized them. Once, in the kitchen, David yanked Jenna against the cold steel of the sink, fingers digging into her thighs, shirt torn wide open, her head thrown back as the faucet dripped in rhythm with their ragged breaths. The metallic clang of pots and her laughter, wild, reckless, almost on the edge of hysteria, echoed around the tiled walls. His hand slid up beneath her skirt, hard, uncompromising. Touch me, she demanded, voice hoarse. Harder, David. You know what I want. He didn't hesitate, the edge of desperation fueling every move, pinning her hips against the basin, devouring her mouth, making her gasp so loud she bit his shoulder to muffle the sound. She was alive, shaking, sweating, voice breaking. He wanted her to beg, to scream, to forget anything but him. At midnight, when headlights threatened to wash their secrets in neon, they took it to the garage. Jenna straddled David in the cramped back seat, windows fogged, doors locked. Her palms pressed to the roof as she rode him, gasping each time the steering wheel rattled beneath his fists. Jenna's voice was raw, an order, a confession, a challenge all at once. Drive me insane, David. Break me. Use me. I want to feel you tomorrow. Want you to leave bruises, just so I remember tonight. He growled, hands gripping her hips so hard it stung, thrusting up until she howled, one hand tangled in his hair, the other scraping nails down his chest. Other times, it was the living room wall. She'd slam the door behind her, drop her bag, and shove him back without a word. Jackets hit the floor. His mouth found her neck. He hoisted her up, pinning her against the drywall, legs locked around his waist, neither caring that picture frames crashed to the carpet. I need you now, Jenna. God, you're fire. Every touch is fucking gasoline, he hissed, teeth at her ear. She answered with a snarl. So burn me, David. Don't stop one afternoon. They didn't even make it past the kitchen. A single look, and he was tossing her onto the table, scattering plates and mail across the tile. The thrill of almost being caught was intoxicating. Neighbors outside, garage door half open, every creak a potential disaster. Afterward, breathless and slick with sweat, they'd laugh, sometimes on the floor, sometimes tangled in half-wearing clothes in absurd places. Fear and excitement interwove, a hot rush that kept them coming back for more. Jenna would stroke his chest, bruises blooming, voice ragged. You make me wild. I'm not scared. God, I want the whole world to hear. David's response was always a dark promise. Then scream, Jenna. Scream like you belong to me. In the silence that followed each storm, guilt lingered. Thick, inescapable. The world outside was cold, law-bound, ordinary. In these moments, though, they chose heat, violence, the risk of exposure over safety. Their bodies didn't ask for permission. They demanded. And so the cycle spun on. Hunger, fear, release, over and over, like they could outrun the consequences, like this hunger could ever be satisfied. Night of firestorm, lightning carved jagged scars through the midnight sky. Thunder crashed close, raw, relentless. The rain hit the roofs in sheets, hard enough to rattle the bones of every house along the block. David barely heard the frantic knocking over the roar, but when he opened the door, Jenna stood soaked and wild, eyes wide with a hunger that matched the storm. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks, water running down her throat. She stepped inside without a word, leaving the door shuddering on its hinges. David pressed a heavy towel into her hands. You'll catch your death, he said, voice rough, maybe more command than concern. She scoffed, shaking out the word. I needed to feel alive. The storm, it drove me crazy. I needed... Her voice cracked, and there was nothing delicate about it. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, then 3. They drank in silence, the kind shaped only by exhaustion and old wounds. Rain hammered at the windows, stray flashes turning their shadows monstrous across the wall. They didn't talk much, just enough to let the pain out in sharp, ugly shards. Jenna spoke of abandonment, of the ache of empty rooms and longing that gnawed through marrow. David confessed his hollow routines, the way silence had become his only company. Jenna set her glass down so hard it cracked. If I have to feel dead one more night, I'll scream. Something snapped. David grabbed her, mouth on her neck, teeth bared, biting the rain off her skin. She surged against him, desperate, fighting back with as much force as he gave. They collided into the couch, tangled, his hands yanking her shirt down, nails digging into flesh, knuckles white. The air grew, thick with violence and wanting. Every kiss was rough, bruising, a test of limits. Jenna sunk her nails into David's shoulder, drawing crescents of blood. Her mark, a savage plea for more. Thunder boomed. David pushed her down, their bodies lit by the turmoil from outside and in. He tore at her jeans, breath hot, whiskey rough. Blanket and sheets knotted, sliding to the floor. Her moans came guttural, animal, as she arched under him, heels drumming wild patterns into his back. Jesus, Jenna, he hissed, voice scraping his throat. You're a storm, blowing away everything left in me. You are the chaos I can't outrun. She bucked up, hair tangled, sweat slick on her chest. Then lose yourself, David. I want to be destroyed. Tonight, I want you to forget the world. The old house shook with every movement. Light from the storm flickered across their bodies, catching the rawness of every line, every bruise forming under the hands that refused to be gentle. Each thrust echoed in the room, a brutal answer to the pounding sky. She gasped his name again and again, voice unrecognizable, part fury, part pleasure, part battle cry. Harder! She screamed, clinging to him, dragging her nails down his back as if she could tear into his soul. He answered her with a fierce, wordless growl, pinning her wrists above her head, overpowering the storm outside with the chaos inside. The bed rocked, sheets twisting, the air thick with the smell of sweat, rain, and flesh. Time broke. It was just sound, the slap of skin, the crash of thunder, her scream, and his rough, breaking plea. You're the fire that eats through all my ice. Jenna, don't ever stop. Their climax came as the storm peaked, her voice shattering into the thunder, his body shaking with the force of release. Afterwards, they sprawled in a tangle on the ruined bed, chest to chest, catching their breath. Rain still beat at the windows, but inside the world was scorched clean. For the first time, David felt utterly raised, like the fire in her had finally, mercifully, burned him all the way down. The line collapses. The world crashed back to reality with the thud of a suitcase. David's wife stood in the doorway hours before he expected, exhausted and unsuspecting, her perfume familiar and foreign all at once. Guilt detonated in David's chest, raw and radioactive. Jenna was nowhere to be seen. She had vanished into the rain-slicked night, slipping like a shadow from his bed before dawn. For days that followed, every tick of the clock sounded like a threat. David carried on the farce of normalcy with the shell-shocked precision of a man walking through a minefield. He smiled at the breakfast table. He answered questions about utility bills. He made love to his wife out of duty. Mechanical. Empty. Haunted by the echo of Jenna's nails in the muscle of his back. But nothing was normal. He burned for Jenna. The memory of her voice, hungry and furious, invaded every silent minute. He snapped at work, and he jumped at small noises as if the whole world was conspiring to expose him. Every word his wife spoke dug a fresh wound in his conscience. Some nights he drowned in whiskey and shadows. Some nights he stared at the empty street, hoping to catch a glimpse of Jenna's silhouette behind her curtains, heart pounding like an alarm. But she kept her distance, vanished into her fortress of regret. Across the way, Jenna was stuck in her own hell, curling into herself on cold sheets, haunted by the scent of David on her skin. The taste of his name stung in her mouth, half poison, half prayer. Guilt crawled up her spine, nesting under her ribs. Her phone stared at her, vibrating with unsent messages and unscreamed confessions. She punched her pillow, sobbed brokenly, felt the weight of every wrong choice crush her ribs for the 100th time. Night after night, their inner voices tore them apart. Never gentle, always raw. David's mind churned. I want you, even if it means tearing my own world apart. Christ, how can I love the risk more than the safety? I'm chained inside this house, beside this woman I promised forever. But every piece of me that still feels alive. That's yours, Jenna. Jenna shaking with self-loathing and longing. I never lived for myself before you, David. I wore the mask. I bowed to shame. I let my soul rot behind good mother's smiles. But with you, my hunger has a name. I want you, even when I hate myself for wanting. Sometimes she'd pace the windows, fists clenched, teeth grinding. Sometimes she'd write him desperate letters and tear them to shreds. One night, after days of silence, David's voice ripped through the dark on her voicemail. Whiskey rough, trembling. You broke me open, Jenna. I can't stop. Even if it ruins us, I need you. Jenna sobbed, doubled over, the sound ripped out of her by a force she couldn't fight. Guilt waged war with craving. Loneliness bled into agony. They saw each other less and less, but desire mutated into something sharper, more unrelenting, a wound that would never close. In those endless, merciless hours, the battle inside was all teeth and claws, tearing at whatever was left of their defenses. The line had fallen, torn down by love too wild to be tamed and regret too heavy to be drowned. And as night bled into morning, both of them knew. They stood at the edge, peering far beyond the ruins of safety, still aching, still wanting, still not ready to let go. The decision. The heat of late summer clung to the city like a punishment. Heavy, electric, desperate. David's shirt stuck to his back as he waited on the darkened porch, hands shaking, throat raw from hours of arguing with ghosts. Across the street, lights flickered in Jenna's window. A silent dare. All the days of silence, of suffering apart, crashed down on him at once. Tonight, everything would break. Jenna answered his knock without a word. Her eyes ringed dark from too many sleepless nights. Her mouth set in a line that quivered with unspent rage and longing. The air between them screamed. It was more violence than embrace when their bodies collided in the entryway. Mouths clashing hard, fingers leaving marks. The decision wasn't words, not yet. It was teeth, nails, skin. It was the kind of hunger that bordered on annihilation. David slammed her against the wall, breath coming hot against her ear. Are we monsters, Jenna? She gripped his face, forcing him to meet her eyes, voice shaking. Call me what you want. I'd rather be damned with you than be empty again. They tore at each other, unmaking months of restraint. No more caution, nothing polite. His hands fisted in her hair as her nails raked his shoulders, arms, chest, drawing blood. She bit his lip until he tasted copper. He responded with a growl, pinning her wrists above her head, bodies gyrating together in mad, furious rhythm. Clothes scattered across the stairs, trailing toward her bedroom. A battlefield of desire. and defiance. She shoved him onto the bed, straddled his hips, her voice shaking with both laughter and tears. Tell me you regret this. Tell me you'll walk away, Jenna dared, breathless. David yanked her down, mouth at her throat. I can't lie to you. I've wanted you since the second I saw you. I want to ruin myself for you. The world outside dissolved. In the sweat-soaked darkness, they gave in to every forbidden urge, every filthy confession, every desperate demand clawed from their throats. Harder, David. No one's ever dared to take me like this. Say it. Tell me you're mine, even if we burn for it. Break me. Brand me. I want to remember you on my skin when this is over. Each thrust was a prayer and a curse, the rhythm of bodies desperate to outrun guilt, reality, consequences. The headboard slammed to the wall, her cries ringing through the night, their hands entwined so tightly bones ached. All the words they'd buried poured free. David, voice ragged. I'd trash my whole life just to have this, even for a night. Jenna, tears shining in her wild eyes. You made me alive. For once, I don't care what forgiveness costs. When their bodies finally stilled, bruised, battered, burning, they lay side by side in the aftermath, holding nothing back. Silence stretched heavy. Decision hovered sharp and mean between heartbeats. David stared at the ceiling, voice thin, shaking. We can leave it all, Jenna. Run, or we walk away. Pretend this was never us. Either way, it won't be safe. Not ever. Jenna pressed a trembling kiss to his mouth, tasting every wound they'd inflicted. We always belong to danger. If it's over, let it be because we chose, not because we're cowards. Outside, the first hints of dawn peeled away the darkness. The world waited, holding its breath. Between them, everything was possible. And nothing would ever be simple. And so they lay tangled in sweat and dust and longing, not choosing yet, still perched on the knife's edge, lost in the delicious, agonizing ache of not saying goodbye. The future, for a moment, remained unwritten, terrible, intoxicating, theirs to destroy or save.